have a request to speak, and is the committee content to hear from George Maxwell, the applicant?
Yes. Yeah.
I think everyone's content. Is the speaker here?
I have just admitted Mr. Maxwell to the call. If he can confirm he can hear us.
Thank you. Someone's microphone is on. It might have been mine with some echo. We shall see how we'll see if it disappears when we proceed. So, Mr. Maxwell, the committee will first hear from the planning officer, then you'll be invited to address the committee in line with the guidance you have received. Please mute your microphone when you're not speaking, and please do not speak unless I invite you to do so. And please do not interrupt other speakers. You'll be given up to 5 minutes to speak. After that, members may ask questions. You'll then be entitled to remain in the meeting for the rest of the item, although your microphone will be muted. So, continuing on, Neil Mayer, Senior Planning Officer, can you present the report, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Quite a few elements to this proposal, all there in the title of the application. I won't read that out. You can see here from the map, the site sits in a rural area in amongst the sort of sparse cluster of properties at Glenbucket, north of the ruins of Glenbucket Castle, to the northeast of Strathdon. Here we have is a photo from the access south of the site leading up the hill. This is the rear of the existing dwelling, which had permission previously to be replaced. And this is, again, a view from the south side of the dwelling, where the turbine's going to sit to the north. And this is a view from approximately the turbine location, looking back down the valley towards the road. You can see the dwelling in shot there, which is going to be replaced with a workshop pop next to it. And just along to the left of this image is where a couple of dwellings for holiday let purposes are sited. And this is the view from the proposed siting of the western short-term letting property. And this is a view westwards, back towards the dwelling. And this is the siting of the eastern short-term holiday let property. So here's our location plan again. We've got our access road coming up the hill here. The existing dwelling that we saw in the slides is to be replaced with a workshop adjacent. The turbine to the north, and to the east of that dwelling and workshop is where 2 holiday lets are proposed. And it is those 2 holiday lets that are the key issue with this application. I'll touch on that in a moment. So this is just the kind of existing information about the property and the remains of a steading building to the north. The wider layout showing, as I mentioned, the siting of the 2 holiday lets, turbine up to the north, much smaller than the ones you just considered. And proposed house plans, proposed elevations of the house, very contemporary design, and the floor plans there. We've got our shed, which would sit adjacent to the dwelling, just to the rear of it, again of kind of ancillary scale, but also able to accommodate vehicles for working the land. And there's just the floor plans of the shed. You can see workshop, storage area, a plant room with some storage above. Here's the holiday let site plans. We've got the east and the east at the top and the west at the bottom there. And again, contemporary design here. You get an idea of the scale here by looking at the footprint, where you've got your parking, a covered entrance, boot room, shower room, an entrance hallway, a dining nook, lounge area, bedroom, ensuite, a covered terrace, and so on. I think there's a little sunken hot tub as well in the grounds, a portion to each of the units. And here's our wind turbine. As we can see, it's 15 meters to the hub with a relatively modest blade diameter there. So certainly of a domestic scale, nothing compared to what you considered in the previous item there. And a bit more detail on the access here as well, with a lay-by, bin store, the right surface, a cattle grid at its entrance, and then being unsurfaced further up the private track. All acceptable to roads development. So I'll just leave that location plan up there. As you'll see through the report, there was a number of consultees. Nobody raises any issue with the proposal, but unfortunately, we are recommending this for refusal. It's been referred through local members for further discussion. And it quite simply relates to the 2 holiday lets. We had pre-app on this application. We fully appreciate it's a package development. The feedback to the applicant's agent at the early pre-app stage was that, well, 2 issues really. Was for holiday lets, it's quite a remote and inaccessible area. There isn't really public transport and sustainable travel options in terms of cycle and walkways, but we can appreciate the remote rural setting here. It's in the national park and tourism is a big thing. And when you actually boil down to the detail of the sustainable transport policies, particularly in MPF4 more so than our own LDP, MPF4 does give scope for a bit of common sense, for lack of anything, to take that pragmatic view and just consider what options are actually available here. Well, you have to look at where it is and recognise that people are going to travel by car, quite simply. There's very limited options in terms of walking and cycling and public transport here. So we're quite content that enough information in the narrative through the supporting information looks at what was reasonable and what is proportionate to this development in terms of sustainable travel, that we're content in that regard. So what was maybe an issue at pre-app is no longer an issue with regards to sustainable transport. The other issue that was raised at pre-app was about the scale of these holiday lets. They are, I mean, we looked at the scale and design here, modern contemporary design, and it's low lying. You can see here the sections, it's cut into the landscape. So there's no landscape and visual or design concerns in isolation, but the issue comes from the scale of the property. Holiday lets, it can range from anything from your little glamping pod up to what would almost be viewed as an annex if it was an ancillary building. But it shouldn't quite be all singing, all dancing, have all the fittings of a dwelling. And the park's policy is quite clear on that. It's very supportive of tourism. It's one of the key aims of the national park. But the policy on tourist accommodation is very, very clear that where tourist accommodation is designed to a residential standard, i.e. enclosed, defined plot, curtilage, dedicated parking, basically livable. It has a lounge, kitchen, dining space, toilet, shower room, bedroom, a further ensuite. It has all the functions of a dwelling. There's no escaping that this is designed to residential standards. It's very clear the intention here is to be holiday accommodation, but the scale and design is of residential standards. When you look at the park's policies, it's very clear that something of this scale, whilst it can be accepted as tourist accommodation due to the scale and design, it must also meet our housing policies. And that's where this one unfortunately falls short, because it does not meet any of the criteria within the national parks policies for a house in a rural location, or I should say houses, because there's 2 of them proposed. Now at pre-app, we raised this and we suggested scaling it down, perhaps reducing the lounge area, removing the kitchenette and dining space, so that it wasn't quite so self-sufficient. Fully understand that there's the market for this self-catering accommodation and so on, but we were clear from the off that the scale and functionality of this property can't be supported due to the wording of the policies. There's nothing significant about this compared to other proposals that would merit support as a departure. There is a level of economic benefit here through visitor spend, but we've had countless proposals that have come in at pre-app and we've said scale it down, and it's been scaled down and we support it. Unfortunately, there's not too many examples that have been tested through an application or indeed an appeal. But we are where we are with this one, and even through the course of the application, the applicant emphasised they were really keen to kind of get going with it with a house and workshop, and we said, well, remove the holiday lets and we'll get you your approval this afternoon, but there is the desire to deliver on the whole package. Again, we fully understand the kind of diversification to farm the land and have the supplemented income from the holiday lets. It's there, but again, these things, they're not of great significance to depart from our policies in this instance. So the application is recommended for refusal due to the scale of the holiday let offerings being to residential standard and those 2 residential properties not meeting our policies with regards to housing in the countryside. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Do members have any questions for Neil? Councillor Blackett.
Yeah, thank you. Neil, I understand why they've put a kitchen in, because there's very limited places to eat in the area.
I'm sorry, Councillor Blackett, but could we stick to questions at this stage?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's. I'm just trying to sort out in my head what because is the kitchen too big? Is that what you're saying, amongst other things? And the other thing is that is there not a way that we could condition that it's only used as temporary holiday lettings, not as residential? Because I know that's happened in the past. So that's my 2 questions: is the kitchen too big? Does that make that part of what is wrong with this this suggestion, and can we not condition it?
So it's nothing to do with how big the kitchen is. That's irrelevant. The fact that there is a kitchen contributes to those properties being capable of functioning as an independent dwelling. It is the combination of the scale and design of the property. There is almost a defined curtilage with a hot tub in the garden and dedicated parking bays. There's a bedroom with an ensuite with a further wash shower room within the property. There's a boot room. There's an open plan kitchen living space. It is a lovely 1-bed property that anyone would, I'm sure, love to live in. We fully note that the submission is for these to be holiday lets, and in the event of approval, and we're policy compliant, there can be a condition attached in relation to occupancy and it being for short-term letting accommodation. Absolutely, but that would not make it comply with policy because it's still designed to residential standards. Whether it's conditioned or not, it is what it is. In land use planning terms, these are 2 class 9 dwelling houses. There's no escaping that, and that is the policy failing. Conditioning their occupation or not does not stop them being a dwelling house in terms of land use plan. In terms of land use planning.
Yeah, thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Councillor Blackett. Councillor Brown.
Thanks. Hi, yeah, thank you. Similar to Jiva, and obviously I understand, I've read, I've looked at all the photos, I've read the report, and I do have some questions to ask to the applicant, but similar, also it's the site location, isn't it? So it doesn't matter, would it be any different, Neil, if they were in, in closer proximity to each other, or, because it's the site is not allocated for dwellings. Is that the planning reason as well, or the planning reason, Neil? As well as the size of the
it's if they were closer together, it would make zero difference. The policy failing comes because policy part 2.2 of policy 2 within the park plan specifically opens up and says proposals for tourist related accommodation other than dwellings built to residential standards will be supported where they ABC. This is built to residential standards. So then you need to look at the supporting text within the LDP, paragraph 4.37. Proposals for new houses that will be used solely for tourism purposes, which has been made clear that isn't the intent here. Whilst they may look like houses, they are class 9 houses. The applicant's submission makes very clear the intended use is for short-term let tourism purposes. So 4.37, proposal for new houses that will be used solely for tourism purposes, which otherwise meet residential standards, i.e. these, will be assessed under the housing policy and will be subject to developer obligations for residential purposes. So that leads us to housing policies. Policy 1. It's not 1.1, this isn't housing delivery in a settlement. It isn't part of an existing rural group. There isn't already 3 buildings adjacent, so we can't add to a rural group. It's not reinforcing the existing pattern of development. It's not designed for affordability and special needs. It's not affordable housing. It's not conversion. It's not a replacement house. So those 2 units fail to meet policy 1. It's nothing to do with land being allocated. It's nothing to do with them being a little bit separated from each other or whether they were touching each other. That's not the, it is quite simply they do not meet policy. And there's no escaping that. These do not meet policy. The policy is very clear, very black and white. Policy 2.2 relating to tourist accommodation doesn't really apply to this because of the scale of them. They must meet the housing policies to gain support, and they don't. What really the focus then turns to is there a significant material consideration that would merit departure from the local development plan to support these units? And we've looked at this, but there is nothing significant here that would merit departing from our consistently applied policies.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Neil, for that explanation. Any other questions? We all content? Don't see any hands up. So, Gregor, I now invite you to speak. I'll time you. You have 5 minutes to speak. I will give you a warning 4 minutes in, so it's 12:02 now, so you have until 12:07. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, thanks to the ward members for asking that our application be considered by committee, and thanks to members for giving us the opportunity to speak today. My name is Gregor. I'm representing my family, my wife Gail, my daughter Eve, and my brother-in-law Robert. Our objective is pretty straightforward. We want to establish a sustainable, high-quality rural business and create a family home. We believe that our proposal can make a positive contribution to the local community, the environment, and the rural economy. So we've submitted a single holistic application spanning multiple elements because our proposed development only really works as an integrated farm, house, and business. We were therefore pretty encouraged by the committee report that recognised the wider merits of the proposal, and in summary, the replacement dwelling is acceptable, the workshop's acceptable, the wind turbine's acceptable, the design is acceptable, the landscape impact is acceptable, the ecological position is acceptable, the access is acceptable, private water supply is acceptable, drainage is acceptable, there are no noise issues. Heritage matters can be conditioned, developer obligations are resolved, and importantly, there have been no public objections. That's important to us too. This leaves one issue for members to consider under the Cairngorm LDP Policy 2.2, and Neil has broadened that view today, whether these two purpose-designed tourism units should, with having regard to their design, layout, and intended operation, be regarded as dwellings built to residential standards. This is ultimately a matter of planning judgment. Judgment on a single line of policy wording that, based on precedent across the park, would appear to be open to interpretation. I hope that you can see that we have purposely designed these units as part of an integrated agritourism enterprise. These are not independent buildings. They completely rely on rely on the wider site for all off-grid electricity and private water infrastructure, while their internal configuration and operational model have been specifically developed around short-term visitor occupation, rather than the conventional permanent residential use. So we designed these specifically for short-term lets. The accommodation has also been designed to address an identified gap in the tourism market by providing a really distinctive, high-quality visitor experience, which responds directly to the landscape, setting, and character of the Cairngorm National Park. We recognise that smaller scale forms of accommodation, such as caravans or glamping units, may more readily avoid the question raised by Policy 2.2. That's clear. However, we just don't believe that simply reducing the scale or quality of the accommodation here would necessarily produce a better planning outcome for either this site or for the national park. The proposed units have instead been designed to deliver this really high quality, low impact, year-round tourism offer, which supports the wider objectives of sustainable tourism, good design, and rural economic diversification. I mean, that tourism economic case is further supported by support letters from Scottish Agritourism, Business Gateway, and Visit Aberdeenshire, all of whom recognise the potential contribution to the development to rural diversification, the visitor economy, and the provision of distinctive high-quality tourist accommodation. It's also notable that the Cairngorm National Park concluded that the proposal raised no planning issues of general significance to the park's aims and therefore did not call the application in. In our view, there's also a clear route to supporting the proposal within the development plan when Policy 2 is also read alongside the newer National Tourism Policy contained within MPF 4. MPF 4
1
policy
minute left.
Nearly there. MPF 4 policy directly directs attention towards tourism development, what the tourist development actually delivers, its contribution to the local economy, its effects on communities and housings, environmental impacts, accessibility, sustainable transport, and carbon performance. On those wider matters, the officer's own assessment of the proposal is strongly positive. In addition to the bespoke let design and our own stated business intentions, we really want to give members further certainty about what these buildings are intended to be. We would be entirely content for an appropriately worded planning condition to restrict the 2 units to holiday accommodation and prevent their occupation, or further prevent their occupation as permanent residential dwellings. Their tourism function can therefore be secured through the Planning Commission itself. We therefore respectfully ask members to consider this proposal as the integrated agri-tourism development that has been carefully designed to be, and to take into account the many recognised benefits of these 2 purpose-designed holiday units and what the overall application can deliver, and to support the application subject to the appropriate conditions securing their continued use as holiday let buildings. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Thank you, Gregor. You're a wee bit over your time, but we'll give you a wee bit of leeway.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
The members have any questions for Gregor? Councillor Cloppert.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Gregor as well coming and speaking to us here. I just wanted to find out the decision to design the holiday lets in this manner and the continuation of the stance as well. Have you done particularly like market research to say
Yes.
that this was exactly what was needed?
Yes, we've done extensive market research. Our idea came from staying at a place up in the far north, and we tried to look for somewhere like this within the Cairngorm National Park, and there really was no equivalent. So we thought this was really additive, and I think that's been borne out by the support we've got from Scottish Agritourism, Business Gateway, and Visit Aberdeenshire. So yeah, we've done a fair bit of market research, and this is not just rare actually within the park, but actually across Scotland. So this type of accommodation is not common. So it represents a gap in the market.
Thank you, Gregor. Anything else, Councillor Cloppert? You?
Not so, thanks.
Good. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell, for presenting on behalf of your family to give us that further information. I obviously you've read the report as we have as well, and I was struck by the sort of advice that had been given through planning, and I just wondered if the consideration was given at that time around reducing the scale as suggested, and what your sort of thoughts and feelings were about that, and the reasons why you may have felt that was or wasn't viable.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and we certainly did consider it. I think our view is that our understanding is these can't really be houses. Firstly, there's the fact that these are fairly unique buildings, and that uniqueness is why they're there, and that gives a good economic case that supports our farm and supports our transition away from oil and gas into hopefully a rural set of jobs. That's the first thing, and then we just think these really struggle to be to be houses because they're all so heavily integrated into the farm. And so therefore, with those two parts, the economic push that was saying that these are good as tourist lets, and then also the fact that we're so heavily tied into the actual farm itself, it's hard to disaggregate them and for them to become houses. That was really our thinking. We tried to design them as best we can to be holiday lets. There's no storage. You know, the lounge and bedroom are straight connections, which is fairly unusual in a residential property. You know, we talk about independent parking. Independent parking is there if you go to a glamping pod, so it's not really that significant. We just felt there was significant leeway within that description of 2.2 that these fitted, and they made a good addition to the park. And that's really what I want to stress to you guys today. We think this adds to the park. We really do. And that's why we're here.
Thanks very much, Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you for that. Councillor Turvey.
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon. Quick question. So, what parts, I do love agricultural tourism, and I think it's like, it's just a great way to, get people connected more to our lands and our farming communities. What sort of, operation do you run that it will, which enhance the fact that, the visitors are going to see, through the farming area of your business here? So
yeah. So what we're hoping to do is start a regenerative business, regenerative beef farm. So we're working with the Cairngorm National Park. We've been selected to be part of their regenerative grazing group, a 3-year program. We'll get stock on. We've got some stock here. We've got a small farm here in Drummoak. We've got some stock here. We'll start to transition that out there, hopefully on success. We'd love to do that in after the winter. And really what we're wanting to do is to develop and test that regenerative farming model. So firstly, we've taken a heap of baseline surveys to understand what the farm looks like now. And then as we start the regenerative journey, we'll see how our beef model performs. So key to that is to develop an economic small beef, upland beef unit, but also to see if we can deliver some of the ecological benefits that this type of farm could potentially deliver. So, we're a potential test case for that. We have the ability to push those sort of regenerative models as far as we can, and at the same time, hopefully, we can deliver what's called sort of maximum sustainable output within the economics of the farm unit itself. And this, our holiday let, that's part of the ethos. We've planted native trees. We're going to continue to plant native trees, so people will come and visit and they can learn about the way we're farming. And the way that we're trying to hopefully, I suppose, further improve or further add to the ecology of the area. So it's not just the farm, it's the farm ecology too. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Blackett.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sitting here really torn on this. So this seems to hang on whether the dwellings are built to residential standards, and you said there was no storage in there.
No.
So obviously you've had discussions with the planners.
Yeah.
Why do you disagree with what because we're being advised that it's built to residential standards? You're saying it's not. Neil's given his explanation as to why he feels it is a residential. Can you explain to me why it isn't, please?
Well, it's a good question. Firstly, there isn't a definition, right? So there's no definition of residential standards. So, and we've clearly seen precedent within the park that large buildings that could be houses are given holiday let status and allowed temporary holiday let accommodation, or they've got some form of restriction on their use. So why do I not think these are houses? Because water and power are co-driven from the farm. To put power up here was cost ineffective for 3 buildings. It's not going to be cost effective for 1. So who's going to buy a house that doesn't have power? there's no room for water processing storage. All the water processing stuff will be done in the shed, and then the water will be piped to the houses. So again, what's your definition of residential standards? Who would buy a house that doesn't have power and water? You know, and to some extent, the policies conflict. So policy 2.2 says not of residential standard. I think 3 lines down it says it's encouraging, winter all-round tourism. That does it, and then there are other policy points that say we want to encourage sustainable design. So do these things actually start to conflict? I just think it's not necessarily as clearly defined.
Thank you for your
as
answer,
perhaps.
Mr. Maxwell. I think I'll bring in Tim, and you're explaining through policy, which I don't think is relevant at this stage. But Tim, do you have something to say?
I was just going to sort of put a cautionary word to committee with due respect to Councillor Blackett. Mr. Maxwell's here as the applicant. He's not here as a qualified expert. So I think members need to be very careful about taking an answer that an applicant gives, which clearly is going to be in support of what they wish to do. I think the hard fact is the planning officers in their professional judgment have made that decision that this is of a residential standard, and I think that's what members need to take on board. It is entirely appropriate to ask the applicant as to why they feel it's not, but you do need to be careful. You know, Mr. Maxwell has a view that there is a grey area. That's not necessarily the view that the professionals do have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Do you have
any further questions for Mr. Maxwell? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maxwell, for your presentation. You can continue to attend the meeting and listen to the discussion, but you will be muted. Thank you. Right, members, do we have sufficient information to determine the application? I don't see a response, so I take it that we do have sufficient information. So if we have sufficient information, we'll proceed to discussion and debate. So would anyone like to say anything regarding this application? Councillor Cloppert.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. As one of the ward councillors, I was quite reading through the reports, and I was quite understanding of the issue at hand. You know, I thought, the build of the holiday lets to be to residential standards just is against policy. However, I do think that the information that has been provided does, start to make me think like this is potentially something that we really need to kind of consider for the benefit of the actual area as well. I'm really quite thinking along the lines that because the holiday lets are integrated and are not able to function independently, as far as I understand, that there is potential there to think along the lines that they are actually to holiday let standards. So I would like to hear what other members are thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Anouk. Jill, you have a comment to make?
Thank you. Yeah, it was just maybe to go back to, I think, what Tim had said and what Neil had said before. My understanding is it's not really a question of interpretation. The planner's view is it's quite clear, and if members did want to go down the line of granting this application, then I understand this this could be done, but obviously it would have to be treated as a departure from those specific policies. And obviously, because having considered the other factors and any other the material considerations. I hope that's helpful. I don't know, Vice Chair, do you want to
Jill.
bring in Neil? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was actually on holiday when this came through to members, so I hadn't had the opportunity to consider it at that stage. But having listened to everything today and obviously read everything and listened to the applicant in more detail, I understand the applicant's proposal around the holistic offering and the sort of unique sort of business that they're planning, developing, and how each element is integrated and, you know, not separate part. I mean, it's commendable that the aspirations of the business to develop around the agritourism, the economic benefits that they're bringing. They've obviously done some research as well into the sort of standards. I understand the policies in front of us, and having explored that, they did mention the reliability on the wider site, and the applicant has also explained in terms of getting just basic infrastructure, the necessity of them to be an integrated sort of offering. So on the basis, I am minded to explore the option of departure on this occasion, and I'm happy to listen to other members.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Withy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I don't want to run the risk of falling out with Neil, because I totally get that in planning terms, obviously it's, you know, the property we're talking about may be built to residential standards, but I was thinking the whole time through the discussion there that in reality, I suppose it's subjective. You know, what's residential standard to one person may not be to the other. I mean, personally, as the applicant said, I wouldn't move into somewhere that's got no water or power or anything like that, but there may be some people that do. So I do totally understand why it doesn't meet policy, but I also understand that in reality, on the ground, I certainly wouldn't consider it myself to be a residential standard. So I guess that's subjective, but we do have to meet the policy, but we can depart from policy. And I think, as Sarah's mentioned there, the social and economic benefits is, if I was to, you know, move to depart from policy and approve it, it would be based on the social and economic benefits that it will bring to the area. And I think there was something in one of the newspapers quite recently, actually, that these sorts of businesses now, farming, agriculture, and most rural businesses like this, are actually now having to rely on lets and tourism and things to subsidise the income from farming and agriculture, because the income just isn't there otherwise. So I think, you know, if we are going to encourage this sort of development, we do need to show a bit of flexibility. I'll wait for others, particularly obviously ward members, but that's just my views. And as I say, I'd be minded, like Councillor Brown, to depart on this on the basis that the social and economic benefits outweigh everything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Withy. I would say my interpretation of what I've heard is there is water and there is electricity, but it's not on the grid, it's off grid, which is slightly different because I'm in a similar situation myself, but they are available.
Yes,
Councillor Turvey.
Apologies, Chair. Yeah, thanks. You're right.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Fonny, for the presentation. Thank you for, you know, to come to speak to us. And I do feel like, yeah, as Councillor Clifford said and Councillor Brown has said, that, you know, because of the explanation we've been given today, you know, and going through, you know, all the positive hard work that's been done, and the fact that, yes, as I said, it's all linked to the farm, and, you know, it cannot be self-sustainable. We do have differences here, and, you know, offering different opportunity for people to visit the Cairngorm National Park, you know, having the experience, you know, and I know that people really cannot do anything with glamping, and I know people have some sort of comfort when they go to visit. I remember back in my tourism day, my boss said I wouldn't go never anywhere was less comfortable than my own house. Well, she may probably miss a few lovely places, but hey ho, that's life. There's some people who really want to, you know, when they're on holiday, to have that comfort and, you know, little luxuries. So I think that in this case, I agree with Councillor Cropper and Councillor Brown that, you know, we should encourage those kind of, you know, developments and, you know, business opportunities, and, you know, for the future of our local rural economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turvey. Councillor Blackett.
Yeah, thank you. I've listened actually really carefully to what everybody has said. The National Park has 4 statutory aims, which are supported by the local development plan, because all the documents that support the statutory aims have to do that. So we've got the aims of to promote understanding and enjoyment, including enjoyment in the form of recreation of the special qualities of the area by the public, and to promote sustainable economic and social development of the area's committees. And those are the park's statutory aims. So several of my colleagues have spoken about a departure from policy on this, and it was Councillor Withy who said that he felt that the residential standard was subjective. I'm still not 100% on that, but however, I would suggest that we depart from policy on the grounds that the whole proposal does support 2.3 and 2.4. Does anybody want me to read those out? Because I've got the park aims here. Not the aims, I've got the policies here. So 2.3 is other tourism and leisure development. So that's enhancing formal and
Forgive me,
informal.
Councillor Blackett, but we're still at discussion. You're
Okay.
proposing it.
Okay.
If you
Okay.
just let us complete this part of the
Yep.
discussion. And Neil, you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, it was just to keep Councillor Blackett right before she got too far. She can't apply other policies. It's 2.2 is the applicable policy. 2.2 is explicit tourist accommodation. These 2 units are proposed for tourist accommodation. Other tourism and leisure developments are non-tourist accommodation. So that would be your visitor attractions. So you can't apply the wrong policy to justify a decision. Just to be clear.
Thank you, Neil, for that. Do we have anything else to add to the discussion? For my own part, what I would say is that I have a great deal of sympathy with Mr. Maxwell, but the policies of the park and our policies are clear. And for instance, what Jiva said earlier about the aims of the policy in the park, we have similar aims, but we still have similar housing policies. And I think if you're taking the tack that you're going to accept Mr. Maxwell's proposal, you're going to have the very, very concrete reasons. And for the life of me, I can't see one. So you're going to have to think very, very hard on that. So if someone can come up with a proposal, we should all listen. Tim, you have something to say?
Yeah, apologies, Chair. Without meaning to prolong the meeting, in situations like this, if a member does wish to look at a departure from policy and wishes to discuss with the planning officer and the legal representative, what can occur is a request for a 5-minute recess to take that advice that then enables an officer to formulate a competent reason for departure from policy. So if there is a member that at some point would want to look at that, they are at liberty to request a 5-minute recess to discuss that, if that would be helpful. And that simply avoids a situation where people are trying to have a discussion on what might be an applicable reason for departure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. That's very useful. Neil?
Yeah, I suppose it was just to go a little further on that point just now. We've obviously had a lot of discussion, and a lot of members have spoken to the benefits of the proposal. Mr. Maxwell presented the holistic proposal, and one part doesn't work without the other. So it's maybe just a little bit of food for thought, which might avoid a little breakaway group and help those members that have made positive noises, for lack of a better term, perhaps articulate that into a planning context. And Chair, yourself said you know what the policy is, and it's a case of finding a reason for departure. I said that myself in my introduction, that the definition that this is houses that is fact. It's not planning judgment. It's very much the case. There is power, as has been said. Countless houses have private arrangements for servicing and infrastructure. The provision of that becomes a civil matter largely. The planning policy is a case of, is it a house? Yeah, it's a house. So we don't meet the policies, but as has been said, we can depart. And this is where I think Mr. Maxwell mentioned planning judgment. And through our report in my presentation, I explained that from the planning services point of view, we didn't consider the package and the economic benefits to be significant enough to warrant departure. So that's the planning services position. Members can arrive at a different position. When it comes to other material considerations, such as social and economic benefits, I'm not sure what the social benefit would be. I'm not sure what the job creation would be here, but the economic benefit is there. So if members wish to give more weight to the tourist offering, the package development, which you have to acknowledge there are elements that aren't part of the application. I mean, to farm the land and pop the cattle and all that on isn't something within the planning services control. So it's difficult to give weight to that element, but you can look at the tourist offering, agro-tourism, the wind turbine and all this, the package, and give weight to the economic contribution that could make, and in this specific set of circumstances is worthy of support as a departure. That would be competent without creating precedent for other developments, because it is a unique circumstance. Mr. Maxwell's spoken passionately about the package of development and everything that they hope to deliver on site. So that may help members that are perhaps leaning that way. The other thing I would add, that within any move to support this as a departure and delegate a grant to us, that you maybe give the planning service a bit of a steer on conditions. And we've mentioned conditioning the tourist accommodation. I would say that is absolutely essential. I would also ask, if members are minded to support this, consideration be given to perhaps some sort of phasing control. Do you want the houses, workshop and wind turbine to be in situ prior to the occupation of any of the holiday lets, for example, just to secure that the package is delivered? So there's maybe a couple of things to consider, and hopefully that has given some assistance to members that see the merit and have mentioned an intent to support as a departure. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Robbie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, first of all, Neil, apologies. I hope you didn't think I was disagreeing with you in terms of it not meeting policy. I totally accept that it doesn't meet policy based on the discussion we had around property. I was just trying to sort of play devil's advocate, if you like, in terms of that there are subjective views, but you bang on, obviously, in terms of policy, no, it doesn't meet it. I totally respect that. In terms of departing from policy, as I mentioned earlier on, I would be happy to support it as a departure based on the social and economic benefits. Again, I do agree with you, Neil. The social benefits are perhaps the weaker part of that argument. The reason I mention social and economic benefits is because it is obviously wrapped up into one under the policy as one statement. So I just used the statement as general. But yeah, the economic benefits. But again, what I would also agree with Neil is that the reason for a departure based on the economic benefits are the fact that it comes as a package. And as I touched on when I spoke earlier on, nowadays, the one part doesn't really work without the other in this kind of industry. Now, you need that package to make it work. So that's why I'd support it. But with that in mind, I would also agree with the conditions that you've suggested be put in place, because that does ensure that it comes as a package and therefore does meet the economic benefits that I would be departing for. So that's my views. I'm not a local ward member, so I'll leave it to local ward members if they want to follow up on that. But that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. So does any other... Anouk.
Yes, hello again. Yes, I think Robbie there just definitely touched on the points that Neil had made that I would also want to support. So I would be very, would like to support against the officer's recommendation and moving this forward to going with the conditioning, I think, to that it could only be tourist accommodation, and also the phasing control, and all, you know, supported by that. It would be outweighing all the other the risks that could be in you know, could be here, that this is such a unique development, and that the economic benefit, I think, is definitely something that has won me over to think of, and that it's just not, you know, that we condition it in such a way that it is only for this particular development, and that it can't set a precedent for elsewhere. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Anouk. Are you along the same lines, Councillor Blackett, Ross and Brown?
Yeah, absolutely. If Councillor Cloppert's moving a motion, I'm
So,
happy to second
yeah.
that.
So if do you want to take 5 minutes, Anouk, and talk to legal and Neil to get a package together?
Chair, I don't think we need a break.
You don't think so? Okay.
I think we're good. I think it's captured, and I think between, well, I can quickly give you a quick ramble that I'm sure members will agree, and certainly Kirsty, we can fine tune the wording through the minute. But I think the essence is that the policies that are referenced in the reason for refusal, I think the view of the members is that they acknowledge that the holiday lets do not comply with those stated policies, but the other elements within the development do comply with the development plan, and when taken as a whole, the economic benefits of the entire development are worthy of support as a departure from those policies in this instance.
Thank you, Neil. Anouk, would you like to
yes,
move forward with a proposal?
Yes, I would like to move forward. What we were mentioning the conditioning to it being tourist accommodation only. I don't know how to put that in the right wording, but that's what we were speaking about. Also, the phasing control, I think is also to be mentioned, and that I would like to move to take this forward and grant permission.
Thank you, Councillor Cloppert. Councillor Ross, are you seconding that motion?
No, I'm not. I've just got a query actually for something that was said. Can we say that this is a one-off and not setting a precedent, as has been said? I'm a little concerned about that, because whilst each application is based on its own merits, I don't think we can say that. Am I correct? And it's not a criticism of a fellow councillor. I'm just concerned as to how that would relate to future applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. A good point. Neil, are you coming in on this point?
Yeah, I can answer that. And sorry, I was just going to add one more little point to Councillor Cloppert's motion, if it was a motion. So you can't explicitly say in your reason for departure that this is an absolute one-off and never shall the same be repeated. We do have comfort that each application will be treated on its own merits. And I think that's implicit in departure, and the former words that I gave kind of said that we acknowledge the failing with the holiday lets, but you acknowledge the other parts of this development that do comply, and when taken as an overall package, this specific application merits support as a departure. Now, if in a year's time, 5 miles away, someone comes in for a replacement house with a wind turbine to the north and some holiday lets adjacent and are proposing agri-tourism, we will assess that on its own merits. They might reference this one as something that was supported as a departure, and we'll have a decision to make at that time, but that's the nature of planning. This one we've talked at, and it seems the members are arriving at a conclusion to depart. The reason for departure is sound and consistent in how we treat any other departure. There's always a risk of precedent. There's always a great joy when any departure gets weaponized and used against us as a planning service, but that's the nature of the beast. So I don't think there's a risk, Councillor Ross. It's just, well, it's as much of a risk as any time that we depart. And sorry, just to expand on Councillor Clopper there, you mentioned the two condition topics that I'd explicitly mentioned, but of course in any delegated grant, whilst you can specifically request those conditions, I would also ask if there's just a line in that addresses any other relevant conditions, because we do of course have a number of things that the consultees have asked for, such as just ensuring the timely provision of the access, the lay-by, the bellmouth, the visibility displays, the bin store, all these other little standard bits and bobs that are nothing too onerous, but we just need to make sure that they're captured in any recommendation.
Thank you again for your advice, Neil. Before we move to motions, Sarah, are you continuing the debate, or are you preparing to second?
I was just happy to second. You know, it's obviously significant economic sort of regional benefits. It's a unique offering and sustainable business which will provide year-round economic benefits. I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Sarah. Come back to the beginning again. Anouk, are you putting forward a motion?
Yes, I am. I see also Tim's hand up, so thank you. Yes, I am
Tim.
proposing.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to suggest it's always opportune after this kind of debate, if you're so minded, if I could ask Kirsty to read out the motion that Councillor Cloppert or officers believe Councillor Cloppert is making. She can then endorse it, and that will allow you to go through due process. So if that be helpful, would you mind asking Kirsty to read out the officer understanding?
Yes. Kirsty, could you read out the officer understanding, please?
Thank you, Chair. So it would be to agree a delegated grant subject to appropriate conditions, including conditions on restricting the two dwellings to tourist accommodation and the phasing control, on the grounds that although the holiday lets do not comply with policy, the other elements comply, and when taken as a whole, the economic benefits of the entire development are worth support as a departure in this specific instance.
Thank you, Kirsty. Have you any changes to make, Anouk? Are you happy with that? I would be very happy, to be honest.
I'm very happy. I'm happy
Thank
about
you.
it, but I see again Jill's hand up there.
Jill, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I was just wondering if we need to put in the policies it doesn't comply with, just to make that clear, because obviously it does comply with a number of policies. Perhaps, I don't know if Neil wants to confirm. My understanding was it policy 1 and 2 of the Cairngorms National Plan, and then 17 and 30 of NPF 4. That was my understanding of the ones it didn't comply with. Perhaps Neil or Tim wants to come and confirm.
Do we need to put that in, that they don't comply with certain policies? Tim or Neil, can I have
Yeah. We should be explicit on what we're departing from. So, I mean, again, the policies are listed in the reason for refusal. I'll always say when you're departing and disagreeing with us, you just turn it on its head. So you've got the policies in that reason for refusal. They're the ones that are not being met. So they're the ones you're departing from. So I was lazy when I was giving advice because I couldn't be bothered reading them out. But when it comes to the written reason, Kirsty's minute and what would go on the decision notice, they will be explicitly stated as the policies that we're departing from. I don't even have it in front of me because I've got too many tabs open, but just for completeness, to help Kirsty out here, we will, I believe, members are stating that they acknowledge that the holiday lets do not comply with policy 17 rural homes and policy 30 tourism of NPF 4 and policies 1 and 2 of the National Park LDP. However, the other elements within the application do comply with the development plan, and based on the economic benefits of the holistic package of development, the overall proposal is worthy as support as a departure from policy 1 to from the CMPA LDP and policies 17 and 30 of NPF 4. And that it would be delegated subject to appropriate conditions, which would include one relating to securing those two dwellings as holiday lets, one relating to the phasing of development, and a host of others that provide what the consultees are needing. So hopefully that keeps everyone clear on what the reason is assuming I am picking everyone up correct, of course.
Thank you, Neil. So, Anouk, that's your motion. Jiva, you are seconding. And do we have a counter motion? Any objections? Are we unanimous on this? I don't see any hands, so I take it we're unanimous, so the motion passes. Tim?
Sorry, I was just going to suggest you might ask if anyone has an amendment rather than a counter motion, but you've covered it. So in the absence of an amendment, then the motion would pass as unanimous. Apologies, I was too slow to jump in and give advice.
Thank you. Just we've gone through a lot this morning. My brain's a bit mushy, but yes, you're quite correct. So I take it we're unanimous, and Mr. Maxwell, your proposal has been accepted and your plan is going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your approval and thank you for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Now, do we need another break, or are we going to crack on with the next planning application? I think we're okay to continue.
Happy to continue.
Good, thank you. The next application is APP 2026-0848, Neil Mayer. We have a request to speak on this one too, from Shane Watt, the applicant. Can I confirm that the speaker is in the meeting?
Chair, do you want to ask members to agree whether they hear from the speaker, and then I can admit.
I heard something from Kirsty, but it wasn't very clear.
Sorry, Chair, I'll make sure my microphone's on. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, I was just saying, would you like to ask members if the committee agrees to hear from the speaker just before I admit into the meeting?
Sorry, I do apologise. I'm trying to hurry on. Do committee agree to hear from the speaker? We've got a thumbs up and no other indications. We're fine. So, Kirsty, is the speaker available?
Yes, he should be in the meeting now.
Good. So, the committee will first hear from the planning officer, and then the speaker will be invited to address the committee. In line with the guidance you have received, please mute your microphone when not speaking. Please do not speak unless I invite you to do so, and please do not interrupt any other speakers. You'll be given up to 5 minutes to speak, and after that, members may ask questions. You'll then be entitled to remain in the meeting for the rest of the item, although your microphone will be muted. Neil, can you present the report, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's another one that's committee being referred by local members. Proposal is for an outbuilding in the rear curtilage of 1 Flory Gardens in Huntly. You can see the property hatched here in purple, sitting sort of to the south of the settlement, just near the A96 and the A97 roundabout there. Play park, grass space to the north of the property, residential properties to the east to the rear, and another residential property to the south over the boundary. Here's some photographs from within the site, looking to the property to the rear. You've got the low level boundary to the property to the south there. Their shed sort of sits adjacent there. And we've got the park here in the bottom right image, looking back across the plot. This is the current garden. So there are a couple of modest sized typical sheds here at the rear of the garden and the properties beyond. Viewing of the site there. Hopefully we can see this, not the clearest plans, but the proposed new building is to sit at the bottom of the curtilage. It sits a metre off the boundary, and we'll see the scale and the elevations in a moment. The scale and siting of this outbuilding would be permitted development, but when these houses were initially built, permitted development rights were removed, and when that development was approved, it was kind of common practice back then. For some reason, we don't really do it anymore. But I do think it's often a tell when something would be permitted development that is typically of a scale that's deemed appropriate, and it wouldn't normally be subject of a planning application. But in this instance, we have a planning application. We've received representation on neighbouring impact primarily. So you can see the shape, a wee side door with some roller doors into the garden. Slight monopitch design, 2.5 meters at the back, just over 3 meters at the front. That's really it. I think a number of the concerns kind of centered on the suspicion that it was maybe going to be a commercial building, but it's not. I mean, the applicant's going to request to speak, so they can certainly talk you through their hobbies and interests. It's for keeping their motorcycles in, not banging and clattering and working as some sort of engineering operation. It's very much their own personal use to store their vehicles, which is typical of any garage or ancillary building. It's their enjoyment of their own property. The design as well, it's 2.5 meters at that common boundary to the rear, which will be a little bit taller than the existing fence, but those properties to the rear sit almost due west, and well, the orientation of the sun from the south, any overshadowing would be to the play park, but it's a modest sized building. Overshadowing to the west isn't really going to be an issue. You've got a 2-story house further west, so by the time there's a low setting sun in summer, that neighbouring property is going to be impacted upon anyway. The scale, not considered to be overbearing in any way. There's no windows that offer an outlook, and if anything, that actually probably improves. If I can just jump back to this photograph here, if anything, it probably improves the situation from intervisibility from the application site into these windows, because you'd have a more solid shed running along this rear elevation here, so it would reduce the intervisibility from these windows to the applicant garden, and indeed from the applicant garden towards those properties there. So there certainly isn't considered to be any worsening in terms of privacy, and you can see sheds on this common boundary within the neighbouring plot too, which would sit higher than the 2 meters of the rear elevation of this. So no overbearing, no overshadowing, no overlooking. It's a reasonably sized building, but like I say, under other circumstances, it would be permitted development. The use is very much as a domestic ancillary building, and this one is recommended for approval. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Any questions for Neil from members? Councillor Petrie.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Neil. Yeah, again, it's myself that referred this one just in regards to, it wasn't necessarily privacy, but more just the location and how it would look within that area. And I wonder if it would be possible, Neil, if you go back to the pictures, could you indicate, or is it easy to indicate, in terms of the sheds and the buildings that are there, where the height ridge of the new building would be?
Ooh, so fences are typically about 1.8. Ooh, where are we gone too far. So we have got 2.5 meters is our rear elevation. So our rear, if you can see on the top left image, I would say where the line I'm sort of hovering the cursor on, but let's remember as well, it's sitting 1 meter off that common boundary as well, which is going to be further off the boundary than these sheds are. It's certainly not going to be to the height of the ridge of this taller shed, if that helps put things into context. But it would span almost the entirety of that rear fence.
Sorry, and is that at its tallest? So I think it was 3 points.
Well, it's at the tallest at the rear, so it's a monopitch roof. So if you look at the elevation here, so this is the back of it at 2.5, and the front is just over 3. So the front of it would be 5.5 meters into the garden. So it's come in. So this is our common boundary that we're looking at there, where there's the current sheds in the corner. So along that common boundary, the fence is approximately 1.8 meter high. That's generally the standard fence height. So a meter in from that, we're 2.5 meters high along this rear, and it slopes up very slightly to 3.03 at the front.
Do you have any other questions, Gwyneth?
No, I think that's useful. Just so just to confirm, Neil, then with that picture, the shed that's in the next garden, it would be similar height to that at the 2.5 meter mark.
yeah, give or take, without having measured it, can't be exact.
Thank you. Any other questions for Neil? I don't see any other hands. So, Mr. Watt, are you available to speak now? You have 5 minutes and I shall be timing you. He is available. I don't see him on the screen.
I'm here.
Okay. Right, Mr. Watt, you have 5 minutes starting now. So it's 12:55. You have 5 minutes. I'll give you a warning a minute before 1 o'clock, just to finish you off. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. My name's Shane Watt. I'm the applicant. I'm an ex-insurance broker of 30 years and I now work for the NHS. My wife Susan and I have lived in One Flora Gardens for the last 13 years. We like to keep our property to a very high standard by maintaining. In fact, we keep it pristine. It's just the way we are. I have a passion for motorcycles. I've got 7 motorcycles. 5 are under 4 years old and 2 classics. They're kept pristine, and what I'm looking for is a building to house my collection and display them. I've been riding for 30 years. I do very little maintenance myself. They go to BMW in Aberdeen. I may occasionally service the classic, but this is once every 2 years. The main reason for the building is to display, clean, and keep this collection, which is for my own use. And the collection's also worth about £75,000. I've tried to look unsuccessfully for standalone buildings in Huntly that feel that the collection's much safer with me, and also the insurers agree that. The construction is metal insulated clad to both roof and walls, steel frame and a concrete floor. This is to reduce maintenance and keep the property looking pristine, which is important to me. It's a modern day construction, domestic construction. I've used insulated clad, which is more costly, but it's making everything better. It would also, if there was any noise, stop it. It's also more secure for the collection and it's a lower fire risk, which is important. The sloped roofs Neil's already covered. The slope goes to the back, which is 2.5 metres. If you see in the photos, the actual sheds at the back of these properties are actually as high as my 2.5 metres. So there's no overlooking. The only way they can see anything is through a top floor window. Windows and doors, I've deliberately put no windows in the building, so there's no overlooking. So there's no light pollution or overlooking for roof or sides. There are 3 electric roller doors. These are domestic roller doors. They're not old clattery metal doors. These are fitted to most domestic garages now in all new developments. Again, they're insulated, which is more costly, but it would make sure of no noise. The roller doors look directly over my own property. There's no overlooking to the sides. You know, it actually helps my property at number 3 because, you know, with that, I can see more at my own garden now than I could once the building's there. So there's no overlooking and no light pollution. The floor's concrete, which I would put a plastic tile on as well, again for insulation and no noise. There's a 1 metre border, which we've covered. Environment, we take a great pride in our property, and in the summer, there's summer flowers front and back of the property. There's also a tree which affords my neighbour and I at number 3 privacy, which is going to remain. The fences aren't affected at all, so if there is any wildlife comes through, someone mentioned hedgehogs, we've done nothing. Hopefully you can see this is purely a domestic building. It's not a workshop, it's purely a building from my own collection. I've lived in the cul-de-sac for 13 years. I work with my neighbours. I've never had one complaint in 13 years. We basically try to work with our neighbours. If they need a hand, I'll help them, vice versa. And I think we're held in high regard. Traffic, there's no extra traffic. I'm using a side entrance, which is the gate. And just to give you context, I probably take a motorcycle out once or twice a week in the summer. In the winter, 3 times in total in a 6-month period. There's no high use. Visitors, I work for the NHS in night shift, so there's no evening visitors or anything. My conclusion here is, you know, I've tried to do everything I can to make the building good for myself and for my neighbours. It abides to all the planning rules and regulations, permitted development, leaving appropriate borders, the size of the building. I've used modern materials and colours. I've increased the cost of the building to make it right and make it better. There's no overlooking windows. And basically, I've tried to do it sympathetically to do it right. We've done everything that adheres to planning rules. As you're aware, this isn't always the case in these permitted development areas. And to be honest, you know, some of the people that have commented are in breach of their own, but that's their affair. To put it simply, it's simply a building to house my collection of precious motorcycles to me. It'll also give tradesmen work because I would be using local tradesmen, metal workers, ground workers.
Your time's just about up.
Last thing to say before I stop is, you know, there were a few objections, but 3 of those objections are from the same person or have been instigated. Whilst this is allowed, it does sort of obscure proposal. The last 2 are from the rear, and again, this building won't be higher than the rear. As I've said to you, 4 out of the 5 people are in breach of their own conditions of the title deeds through running business, outbuildings, decking, summer houses.
I don't
That's
think
your
that's
time up, Mr. Watt.
appropriate.
It's all I'm trying to do is let you see that what we've tried to do is make it relevant and do
Thank
it the
you.
right way. That's it. Thank you, folks. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening.
Does any member have a question for Mr. Watt? Kirsty, you've your hands up.
Sorry, Chair, it's just a reminder that the committee would need to suspend standing orders to continue after 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Is committee content to suspend standing orders?
Yes.
Thank you. So any questions for Mr. Watt? Okay, Mr. Watt, that's thank you for that. You can remain in the meeting and hear the discussion, but if you do so, your microphone will be muted. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do members have sufficient information to determine this application? Yes. So we'll now proceed to discussion and debate. Who wants to start? Councillor Petrie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, myself that referred this one, I was just unsure. It just when I first read the application seemed to be a significant size building within that area, and I know the area well, and I just had some concerns about it. Again, actually similar to the previous application, having seen the pictures and the layout and everything, and the nearby buildings of similar height, I think I am more reassured. Personally, I don't think I'd have a building that size in my garden, but this isn't a personal decision. This is in terms of the area and the planning decision that we are going to make. And I think given the proximity of buildings of similar height, etc., my concerns around whether or not it was just too big in that particular area have been relayed to some effect. You know, there is no overlooking, so that's not an issue, and I think Neil has explained well in terms of overshadowing. It's going to impact the park side more than the residents at the other side. So with that in mind, I think I'm probably at this point content to accept officer recommendations to grant. Like I say, it's a particularly big building, I think, but it's personal choice, and I don't think that there's anything to refuse on here given surrounding buildings as well.
Thank you, Councillor Petrie. Any other comments from other members? As a local member, I would just say that I agree with Councillor Petrie. I don't think there's an issue really here. We've had a good presentation. We've listened to Mr. Watt, and I'm personally quite content to grant. Is anyone otherwise minded? Can we then, therefore, Kirsty, could you record that we are of the same mind? We're all it's a unanimous decision to grant.
I think Kirsty's on mute, Chair, but I'm sure that would be fine.
Good.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. That's recorded.
Thank you, Kirsty. We'll continue. Are you content to continue on to the next one and then have a break? Councillor Petrie.
without wanting to hold up planning officers too long, I do think it is now after 1, so my preference would be to have a break now and return, although I am aware that probably holds Neil in the meeting longer than he wants to be here, but I just think we've been sat for a fair while.
Thank you, Councillor Petrie. Councillor Brown?
I was just going to ask for a break for lunch as well, Chair, but if others proceed, then I'll take that, but I would prefer a lunch break if that's okay.
Thank you. I think we all could do with a lunch break. Councillor Ross?
Absolutely. I go back to health and safety and how long we've been sitting at our desks this morning. I think it's really important that we get regular breaks, even probably more than we've had. So I would agree 100% that we need to stop for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. How long do you want a break for? Half an hour?
That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's now 13:05. We'll come back at, say, 13:40. Everyone content with that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Chair.